Welcome to the press conference on the 2025 policy address. We'll first take a few pictures. Almost done. So this session is on land and housing supply. Joining us are Secretary for Development, Ms. Bernadette Lin, Ms. Winnie Ho, who is the Secretary for Housing, Mr. Ricky Lau, the Permanent Secretary for Development, Ms. Doris Ho, also Permanent Secretary for Development, and the Deputy Secretary for Housing, Ms. Estrella Chang, along with the Permanent Secretary for Housing, Ms. Charmaine Li. So the two secretaries, the heads of bureaus, will tell you about the work in their respective purviews, and then we will come to a Q&A session. We will start with Ms. Bernadette Lin. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I will cover the policy measures under the latest PA on land. At yesterday's press conference, I briefed you on the measures about the northern metropolis. So today, I will focus on matters outside the northern metropolis. Some measures will apply to the NM for sure. Now, our forecast of spade-ready sites for the next 10 years. We want to give society a sense of our land supply. In recent years, we have been updating and announcing the spade-ready sites over the next 10 years. This is to give everyone a sense of the latest progress of land development. Land development has been satisfactory over the past few years. Based on the forecast from last year, this financial year is expected to produce 150 hectares of spade-ready sites. We are confident that we can meet the target. For this year, meaning 150 hectares, the land will come from mostly the Tongchong New Town extension and the northern metropolis. This financial year is about to end. So on this slide, you can see the forecast over the next 10 years. The spade-ready sites over the next 10 years are expected to amount to 2,600 hectares. 70% will come from the northern metropolis. In 2021, we announced the 2030 Plus study, Hong Kong 2030 Plus towards a planning vision and strategy transcending 2030. So when we look at the 30-year period all the way to 2048, we will need 7,000 hectares of land ready. You can do the math yourself. 7,000 hectares over 30 years, that means roughly 200 or so hectares per year. That's the annual average. And then you look at this 10-year forecast of developable land or spade-ready sites. Every year, we will have 260 hectares each year. That's the average. That's why we are broadly in line with our target. The projected spade-ready sites will meet our development needs. We will also have room to build up a healthy land reserve. I want to stress once again that getting sites ready does not mean we will roll out the sites or sell the sites or put the sites to use right away. We will have to bear in mind the market conditions, and then we will adjust our land sale strategy in an orderly, measured, and pragmatic way. So this is the 10-year forecast of site formation. This information will be on the website of the Development Bureau in due course. So as I said, 1,800 hectares will come from the northern metropolis. Outside the NM, we also have other land development projects such as Longkutan, Zhangguanou areas 137 and 132. And also we have the Tongzhou New Town extension. Over the next 10 years, these projects will also give us 270 hectares of spade-ready sites. And that's already included in the 10-year forecast I just showed you. In recent years, much of our land development is about fostering industrial development. Over the past few months, you will have heard the scheme called the Hostels in the City scheme. The Development Bureau and the Education Bureau launched this scheme in July this year. So we're streamlining procedures. We encourage the market to convert existing commercial buildings into hostels for university students. From July till now, it's just around 2 months. We have already received more than 150 preliminary inquiries. And we have been assisting interested parties with submitting their applications. As at the middle of this month, we have received 9 applications. 5 out of the 9 formal applications have received the approval in principle from the EDB. These applications are about converting an entire building into a student hostel, and they are in Hongham, Kuntong, Shemshui, Mongkok, Wanchai, and Shenwan. These are all in the urban areas. Most of these 9 applications are now office buildings. The Development Bureau's Development Project Facilitation Office will give assistance. Once these projects are approved, these projects will have to be completed within 18 months. For these 9 formal applications, if they work out and they're implemented based on what we know, they will be able to provide roughly 1,500 bed spaces. And because of this interest in the hostels in the city scheme, the chief executive also announced in his policy address that effective immediately, this scheme would be expanded, covering not just converting existing commercial buildings. On an existing commercial site, if you're building a new student hostel or you are tearing down an existing office building and turning it into a student hostel, you will also benefit under this scheme. For existing industrial buildings, if they meet the planning and lease conditions, and you convert that building into an office building, that office building will also be covered under the Hostels in the City scheme. This year, our Bureau will also reserve at least 3 new commercial sites in the urban area for building new student hostels. We will invite expressions of interest from the market in due course. Another task we are working on is giving support to the yacht economy. Now for 3 sites, the X-Lema Quarry site, the expansion area of the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter, and the Hongham Station waterfront area, we put forward land plan proposals. Now for the X-Lema Quarry site and the expansion area of the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter in particular, there will be berths. On that, we have invited expressions of interest from the market. The feedback has been positive, so we're going through the feedback. Our goal is that within the second half of next year, we will start the formal tendering for the X-Lema Quarry site. And then, for the expansion area of the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter, we will start tendering for the berths and onshore facilities for Aberdeen in the first half of 2027 or before. We will also go to the Legislative Council for the funding to cover the works at the expanded area of the Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter. As for the Hong Kong Station waterfront area, we have also received a lot of feedback from the public. Much of it has been positive. So we're working towards kickstarting the statutory planning process in the second half of next year. There's a brief paragraph in the policy address on beautifying Lan Kwai Fong streetscape. I want to share my thoughts on this initiative. Our concept is to highlight a point. Urban renewal is not just about old buildings. For landmarks, icons, we want to do something about the streets, the walls. If these features are aging, they affect the appeal of Hong Kong. That's why we will pick Lan Kwai Fong as a place where the Development Bureau will coordinate the work across departments, including the Highways Department, the Architectural Services Department, and the Drainage Services Department. We want to improve the urban design at the micro level. We want to start the work. If the results are good, we will explore expanding this arrangement to other districts as well. For Lan Kwai Fong, for the year to come, we want to start with repaving of the carriageways, dressing up the refuse collection point, and using specialty manhole covers. So these are some quick win projects. We will start with those, and then for phase 2, we will cover the streets nearby. That's also going to involve some community making. Now I come to a key task, that is urban renewal. Our building stock is aging. The aging is happening fast. Over the past 10 years, each year we got 500 extra buildings that was more than 50 years old. But redevelopment covered only 160 buildings per year. This is not to say every old building needs to be redeveloped. With proper maintenance, an old building can last for a long time. But the problem is, you get an extra 500 old buildings every year, whereas you only redevelop 160 buildings per year. This discrepancy warrants attention. And we also have to redouble our effort to encourage urban renewal. This is not just about encouraging the Urban Renewal Authority. We also want to encourage the private market to take part in the process. The policy address this year proposed policy measures on 3 fronts. First, as you can see on this slide, this is specifically for the URA. In the Northern Metropolis, in Kutong North and Fanning North, both being new development areas, we will set aside 3 residential sites for the URA for their future flat-for-flat schemes. Side land for the URA. You may wonder, some months ago, we granted 2 sites to the URA, one in Cheung Kwan O, Area 137. Another site was on Bailey Street in Hong Kong. We granted land to the URA. We also set out an expectation, and that was the URA will have to work with the Development Bureau on reviewing the acquisition and redevelopment policy. We want the URA to take a sustainable approach, sticking to that 7-year rule in compensation for a building that may be over 50 years old. Is not a sustainable practice. So a review is in order. And for building owners who will be affected, we want to give them more options. A flat-for-flat arrangement can be one of those options. Land for the URA for that sort of work. For that to work, we have to look at acquisition and redevelopment strategies as a whole. Our second measure is about relaxing the arrangement about transferring plot ratios. For those following the issue, you will know that in July 2023, there was a step taken at the Town Planning Board in Yaoqing, Yamate, and Mongkok. We allow the transfer of plot ratios in redevelopment projects within those two districts, Yamate and Mongkok. So say you redevelop a building in one of those areas and you do not use up the plot ratio. That remaining unused plot ratio can be transferred to a different site in the same district. That process will require the approval from the TPB. Where premium has to be paid, it will have to be paid. But the restriction is that the plot ratios can only be transferred within the same district. This time, we want to go further. This time, we want to allow the transfer of plot ratios across district. Our goal is to help the URA and private developers. We want to give them an extra incentive to engage in urban renewal. So in the future, we will explore the transfer of plot ratios. There may be some parameters, some restrictions on the transfer of plot ratios across sites, across districts, but we want to relax those restrictions. The third measure is an entirely new concept. You may recall that last year we enacted an amendment bill on compulsory sale of buildings. For 7 designated areas, we lowered the threshold for compulsory sale of buildings. In those 7 districts, you can see a concentration of old buildings. Now, of course, the URA will also focus on these 7 districts. But we also want to guide market forces to pay attention to those districts. So this entirely new concept goes like this. Say you have a private owner in an old building, and that building is in one of these 7 designated districts, and redevelopment comes along. We can give some plot ratio to this owner. And here's what it means. Let's say the maximum plot ratio based on the outline zoning plan is 7. And then on top of this plot ratio of 7, we recommend giving an extra 20% of gross floor area to this site. So this extra GFA can be used on the same site for a new building, or this extra GFA can go to a different site in the same district. If the landowner does not want the extra GFA and wants to hold on to the concession, the landowner will also have the option of turning the extra 20% of GFA into money. So we record the value of the GFA. We take a snapshot of the monetary value of that extra 20% of GFA. In the future, when there's a lease modification involving the same landowner, that monetary value can be deducted from the land premium. So why are we going so far? Why are we giving extra GFA, and why are we even converting the extra GFA into money for landowners? Here's our thinking. We want to promote redevelopment of old buildings in those 7 designated districts. Society as a whole, the public as a whole, will benefit in the end. That's because old buildings are aging fast. I have covered some measures concerning all districts. Many details are involved in the implementation. So on this front, we will be working with stakeholders such as READER and the industry. So in the first half of next year, we will work to implement these arrangements at that point. Another measure I want to briefly go over is this. There are many old industrial buildings in urban areas. We have the revitalization scheme for industrial buildings, but we feel that the time has come for a new round of study on existing industrial stock. So we will work to set out the recommendations within next year. Yesterday, I shared with you the concept of pay for what you build in premium payment. The pay for what you build approach also applies to redeveloping industrial buildings. And you don't have to wait for the conclusion of the area assessment of industrial land in the territory. Now, I want to quickly go over the next few slides. They have to do with cutting construction costs. Construction costs are high in Hong Kong, and we want to deal with this problem. We will speed up the approval and the vetting process for different steps. So you have public works, you have private projects within the Northern Metropolis and private projects outside the NM. Under the Development Bureau, there will be different officers in charge of different projects. They will be supervising the process. Another initiative, this is also related to construction time and costs. We're relaxing the GFA exemption arrangement for car parks in private developments. So in the future, when you build a car park on the ground level, as long as you stay within 2 stories, you get full GFA exemption. There will no longer be this mandatory requirement to build an underground car park for you to qualify for the exemption. We believe most private developments will benefit from this new initiative. Most private developments we have come across in recent years had to do with car parks of 2 stories or just 1 story. So you simply build on the ground floor, you build above ground, and you get the full exemption. The merit of this approach is that we can lower construction costs. You build a single story of car park above ground, and that costs only 60% of the single story of underground car park. And you can also save a year's time by building 2 stories above ground as opposed to building 1 story underground. This is a decision we have reached after striking a balance with involving time. On reducing construction costs, we will launch the Project Cost Management Platform. This is for the Development Bureau to keep an eye on costs from end to end. We have also invited the Hong Kong Building Technology Institute to help us take a look at construction standards and costs. We will look at the load-bearing capacity of foundations and concrete strength. We will also try out central procurement for the modules, MIC modules. That is, we will start this in the beginning of next year. We will also strengthen project governance. We hope that even before we come to the funding stage, departments can adopt this ownership mindset. I'm sorry for overrunning now. I give the floor to Ms. Winnie Ho.
Thank you very much. After land, we talk about housing. Let me talk about the achievements over the past 3 years. We've done a lot. I'm sure you must be really familiar with this. Now we have the combination measures, the combination punches approach. We have reversed this backloaded situation. When we first took office, the total was 380,000, 1/3 in front, 2/3 at the back. Now we are reaching 60-40. We can cover 60% in the first 5 years and 40% in the last 5 years. So in 3 years' time, we have completely reversed this backloaded public housing supply situation. We have introduced the light public housing, 30,000, 4,400. We have surrendered the keys to the users. For 4,400, we can help 10,000 households. So this has produced tangible results. In the second half of 2025, there will be an additional 5,000 units. We'll have 10,000 units coming on stream this year. In 2026, another 20,000, close to the 30,000 target that we have. We have also shortened or capped the waiting time. The composite waiting time is 5.1 years. 1 year shorter than 6.1 years at the beginning. With 1 year shorter, people can save around $36,000 if they move into PRH, or $50,000 of rent if they move into LPH units. If you are living in the LPH units for 4 years, you can save anything up to $200,000. We use MIC for the LPH at Yao Pok Road and Choi Hing Road. We have manifested the beauty of this system within 1 single year. We have an 18-story project with 2,300 units. We have broken a record for rapid construction of high-rise buildings in Hong Kong. This is equipped with elevators. Now for the 2,300 people, they're all smiles when they're moving in. In terms of home ownership, we heard the aspiration for home ownership. We do have the package of measures. We are adjusting the ratio between PRH and SSF from 7:3 to 6:4. And there are many young people, many young families who really aspire to purchase the home ownership, the HOS flats. Now, for those who fail to get the HOS many times over, we let them have more chances. We give them additional ballots. For the young people, people under 40, we also give them extra ballot numbers. We also have the wife home secondary market scheme. We have increased by 1,500. And all these are allocated to young family applicants and one-person applicants aged below 40. We also expedite the turnover of PRH tenants. We are encouraging the well-off tenants who have accumulated a lot of assets to pay additional rent close to the market rent. We're also incentivizing them to purchase the subsidized sale flats and move out of the rental housing so that their rental housing can be freed up for other needy people. Like the Development Bureau, we are all very keen to facilitate R&D and application. We have cooperated with NAMI to make sure that the MIC units or modules can be linked together faster. We have this MIC 2.0. Under this MIC 2.0, we also have the MIMEP. we're using the BIM-enabled technology to make the design more efficient. We're introducing robotics to the site. We have seen some robotic competition, painting work, and so on. There are other usages. The DEVB has showcased some robotics for other purposes. Estate management, we have 83,000 households in the old housing estates. We also have new rental housing. The housing management is going to be very important. We have introduced a new technology to help with our work. We have the robots for security and cleansing. We also use AI to analyze the images to detect objects thrown from heights. We also have the IoT sensors and mobile devices so that the officers can have the details in the mobile devices. All they need to do is to take a photo and send it across to the office, and the record will be very clear with the location, the time, clearly recorded. Well-being Startup 2.0, my earrings, I bought them from these startups. They are well worth supporting. We put forward this idea for the young entrepreneurs to have an opportunity to showcase their potential. We allow them the discounted market rents. They may be selling ornaments and the health food and so on. The 1.0 program was very successful, and we're turning this into 2.0. And some shops in the housing authority would be granted to them on the basis of the discounted market rental. We have by the fourth year, they will be charged the full market rental. And we're also extending this to the private organizations. There are 16 private organizations that are supporting us. We have made available some shop spaces, and 50 or so shop spaces are added by the private sector, and some of them are pop-up stores. On the right-hand side, the one in which I was dressed in orange, they're making the paper craft, and this is made available by the private sector rent-free for the young people, young entrepreneurs. And when they are maturing, they will be collecting some rent off them. It has produced pretty good results. Some of the entrepreneurs are selling the game cards for the first month, and they managed to achieve a turnover of 6 digits, and this is well worth promoting. In the policy address 2025, we have a whole raft of measures and initiatives. We are enriching the housing ladder to encourage upward mobility. And housing supply, we are achieving pretty good results. For the 5-year period, we have produced 189,000 units, about 80% higher than when we took office. And we are producing more than 30,000 units per year, so the output is really a new high over the past 10 years. And in 2026-27, we are moving towards 4.5 years of waiting time. Like public housing, some of them have been completed. There were 5,000 more, and this year we have 10,000, 20,000 more. Next year we're moving closer to 30,000. And in 2027, we should have a leftover of about 200 units. Enrich the housing ladder to encourage upward mobility. And we're making the housing ladder more stable, more healthy. And for green form and white form ratio. We're adjusting the ratio from 40-60 to 50-50. At the next WSM exercise, we will be increasing the quota by 1,000. Last year, it was 6,000. Now we're adding another 1,000 to take it to 7,000. Half of them will be devoted to one-person applicants under 40. Now, when we issue the approval letters, we may be coinciding with the HOS allocation, and some would be giving up on the chances. About 15-20% of the offer letters were wasted. So we are increasing the number of approval letters to make sure that the quota would be used more effectively. And people are aspiring to get on the housing ladder. They would like to have larger units, in particular those in the PRH units. They like to improve their living conditions. And they like to have 300-400 square feet of 2-3 bedroom flats. We like to increase the proportion of this. At the moment, the assignment or alienation restriction is 15 years, and we are relaxing the alienation restriction period of new SSF for sale in open market to 10 years to encourage upward mobility. There are two policies regarding the owners of subsidized sale flats. After paying the relevant fees, and they can let the unit to eligible white form applicants. Previously, they were only allowed to lease it to those waiting for PRH. Now, there may be people who are eligible for HOS, but they cannot make it, and they can choose to live in the rented white form units. So we are fixing the quota at 3,000 to start with. The other policy is the flat for flat scheme for elderly owners. It is a good scheme, and we are enhancing the scheme. We also allow the owners to move to other districts for smaller units. And some young families would prefer to live in the urban areas, and some elderly people would like to move to the extended urban areas upon retirement. It is a pretty good idea for them to move across to the extended urban areas, and they can trade down to a smaller units. When they first move in, maybe they move in with a number of kids. When the kids have grown up and moved out, the old couples might figure that it would be a good idea for them to move into smaller units and cash in on the larger units. It would be a good idea for them. So we encourage them to move to smaller units. There will be plenty of supply in the public housing, and we have to control the costs. We have a deputy director leading the project facilitation office. And this is a facilitator as well as an enabler. At the deputy director and the assistant director level, there would be coordination, and they would be putting the heads together to speed up the projects and control the costs. Prompting completion, the idea is to make sure that we can complete a certain number of units within a certain time frame. Some projects might proceed faster or slower. If they fall behind, we have to make sure that they will be catching up to make sure that they will be able to meet the target. This is the idea of prompting the completion. And building materials, and we are extending the scheme to building materials, and they can use the database. And we would also align the standards to make sure that they cover all the commonly used materials. MIC modules, we will consider batch procurement to better control the costs and the standards. And the process can also be expedited that way. Leveraging technology. Now, this is the self-developed, BIM-enabled, systematic approach to foundation design. This can save the construction costs. With this system, each block can save us $1 billion. In the northern metropolis, if we have 20 projects, 100 units, we can save as much as $100 million. If you're interested, I can talk a lot more about that. I'm grateful to my colleague, Permanent Secretary Mr. Lau, the BD, the CDD, the HD are examining the rock features in the northern metropolis. We are using a specific design to increase the loading of this kind of rock. And if you pose questions later on, I can elaborate further on this. Robotics, we will specify where we will be deploying robotics. I'll be very quick. Basic housing units, in a month's time, we will be aiming to introduce, to commence this in March 2026. And this is a very important step of bringing into place the BHUs. And we will be inviting the owners to register and then to improve and upgrade. And this long-standing problem of subdivided units will be disappearing from Hong Kong. We are getting on with a lot of redevelopment work, 11 ones. Wafu, Choi Hong, cases in point. There are 7,000 units in Choi Hong, 9,000 in Choi Hong. Now, to move them elsewhere, we have to build the decanting housing estates and the reception housing estates. Last year, we talked about Ma Chau Wai Estate, Sai Wan Estate. This year, we announced the redevelopment plan for Ma Chau Wai and Sai Wan. This year, we also have selected the oldest housing estate in Hong Kong, and that is the model housing estates. There's some of them 71 years old, and it is difficult to patch up the defects, and it is very costly. We have to face up to this redevelopment of the old housing estates. So much for my presentation. Let's work hard and enrich the housing ladder to encourage upward mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now open the floor for questions. Please put up your hand if you want to put questions. Please limit yourself to 2 questions. The one in white. I'm from Oriental Daily. A question for the Development Bureau. Ms. Bernadette Lin, you said this time you are going far to promote redevelopment. You're taking a range of measures to get developers to help out with urban renewal. How many cases do we see private developers assisting with urban renewal? Is it because of a poor market response? And is that the reason behind these incentives? My second question is for the Housing Bureau. And that has to do with the central procurement of MIC modules. So where will these modules be used? Will future light public housing and public rental housing units be using these MIC modules? This matter falls under the heading lowering construction cost. So will that translate into lower home prices? How far will that reduce home prices in the future? On your first question, on the desire and participation of the private sector in urban renewal. Two factors are at play. First, market conditions and the broader economy. The property market has not been at its best over the past 2 years. So mergers and acquisition as well as redevelopment have slowed. The compulsory sale figures have slowed down a bit, but we have seen some uptick recently. A major factor is the broader economy. Another factor affecting this desire for redevelopment is systemic. When we look at redevelopment, you look at the old buildings, you look at the capacity and density. Those old buildings may not be up to the standards of our modern OZP standards. The plot ratio of old buildings may be as high as 17. You may be aware of what I'm talking about. Sometimes the plot ratio may be 17. We try to allow a redeveloped building to keep the old plot ratio. But for our new planning rules, there are building height restrictions. There are caps on the building density. So that means you cannot replicate the same density after redevelopment. In this context, without any government incentive, developers may not want to go ahead with such redevelopment. That's why we're launching measures. These measures address some constraints about old buildings. So we will talk to the industry. We want to see the projects implemented. We'll try to drive this process. Your other question has to do with central or batch procurement. The journalist asked a great question. When we were building the light public housing, the Architectural Services Department was in charge of the project. The ASD used batch procurement for the MIC modules. The modules were 20% cheaper. So there is merit in this approach. The Housing Authority is looking at the MIC modules. They're trying to learn from the experience of the ASD. Of course, some changes may have to be made when the Housing Authority procures the modules. They will find a way that suits their situation. As I said publicly, in the next 5-year period, half of our projects will adopt MIC or modular integrated construction. In fact, the number of projects may go slightly above the 50% mark. And I also want to explain a point further. When we sell our subsidized sale flat, the prices are linked to people's means. When we sell our SSFs, we look at the median income of the low-income families. We assume that these medium to low-income families use 40% of their household income to pay off their mortgages. So the prices of the SSFs are not linked to the construction costs. But of course, for me, lowering the construction costs also matters. This is because the Housing Authority also has to maintain its financial robustness. We're working on this, and I'm very grateful to my colleagues for coming up with so many ways to save money. Next question. The one in the white shirt.
Morning Post. With the government planning to allocate an additional 30 billion for infrastructure project. How will this affect the government financial stability, and also what types of projects could be expected from this funding? And any of the construction project would apply the mainland construction standard apart from the Northern Link. And given the government's long-term agreement with LIV Golf, does this mean the government has given up the site as housing supply? Thank you.
Okay, perhaps the Development Bureau will take all the three questions. I would later on invite Permanent Secretary for Works to take care of your question regarding the building standards of projects, whether mainland standards will be used. As regards your first question is about the allocation of an additional $30 billion within 2 to 3 years for us to do capital works projects. To repeat a bit of background, we have already announced that for the next 5 years, including the current financial year, the average capital works expenditure each year will be $120 billion. So what has been announced recently is that for 2 to 3 years, if you divide the $30 billion over 2 to 3 years, that will be an additional 10 or 20. Then we will be on top of the average of $120 billion as a budget for us to plan our public works projects. As to how the annual expenditure will be used, we normally announce that in the context of the annual estimates. But our initial thinking is that with an additional $30 billion, and that additional is earmarked with the interest of the small and medium enterprises in mind. So we will try to use the additional budget to roll out more public works projects which are relatively smaller in scale and will provide businesses for the SMEs, such as the repair and upgrading of our water pipes, the repair and upgrading of our roads, and also our piers. So just examples of categories that we'll be thinking of. As regards your last question about the future use of the Fanling Golf Course, I think the situation basically remained the same. That is for the 30 hectares or so, which have been reverted to the government and is now government land, is under the care of a government department. As and when the LIV Golf and the golf club, they have contacts in Hong Kong, and they would like to use that part of the government land as well to support the competition, we will be most happy to do so. And this has also been done before. As regards the future of the rest of the golf course, which is still now run as a golf club, we will take into account the results of the judicial review that is ongoing. But the hearing is scheduled for sometime next year. So still some time to go. But basically, it's the status quo for now. Ricky.
Thank you, Secretary. As regard the construction standard, we are open to refer or to adopt any international standard, including the national standard. In brief, construction standard, we are talking about the design standard, the product standard. So now we are reviewing the Hong Kong design standard of the construction works through engaging the Building Technology and Research Institutes. We will make reference to the international and national standard and to ensure that we maintain the safe construction quality and also with cost-effective standards. So we will review every design standard in Hong Kong, but the first batch will include about 15 items which are most impactful to the construction cost. And from which 2 of them, as mentioned earlier by the Secretary, is about the concrete strength and the foundation, the bedrock bearing capacity. They are most important one, we think. So these two will be completed in the first half of the next year. As regard to the product, existing currently we have the mechanism to use or to adopt new materials and new products, including those cost-effective products from the mainland China. But we can see some room for improvement. For example, under the existing mechanism, the submission of the new material or product shall be under a project. And also, this approval will be used by individual project teams. So whenever there is a new product, you have to go through from project team to project team if you want to have a wider adoption. Now we have engaged BTRI, Building Technology and Research Institutes, to set up central inventory for these approved materials and products, through which we can accept the application from the supplier or the contractor before any project. That's mean even though you don't have a project in hand, you have a new material, you have a new product, very cost effective from anywhere, including the mainland China, you can apply for it. And then we will check against our standard. If it is compliant with the standard, we will include it in the list. So for other project members of the individual teams, they can make reference to their list and to adopt the materials or products very conveniently, which can make the cost-effective products from the mainland or elsewhere widely adopted in the whole industry, and so we can reduce the construction cost as a whole. Thank you.
The one in blue, please. Economic Journal. 2 questions, if I may, about redevelopment. The 7 designated districts, 20% additional plot ratio. At the moment, under the OZP, let's say it is 10. That doesn't mean that they can go up to 12 in terms of plot ratio if they do not use the 2 plot ratio. And if they want to build a commercial residential building, do they need to transfer the additional plot ratio elsewhere? And what about the premium across districts? Do they have to pay the premium? Another question also about the redevelopment. You said a moment ago that people can keep the additional plot ratio for conversion into cash, that the plot price can drop by 30% within a couple of years. And how does it work in reality? Thank you very much. 2 questions also about the operational details. If you're talking about an old district site, to cite an example, for example, in To Kwa Wan, there is an old building site at the moment under the OZP. Now, this is only for example. For argument's sake, the PR is 10, like you said a moment ago. To Kwa Wan is one of the designated districts because there is a high concentration of old buildings, and we would give away 10% of the plot ratio. Like you said, it would mean 2 plot ratio. At the moment is 10, 20%. It would be additional 2. Now they can, after fulfilling the TPB vetting, use the additional plot ratio on the site. It can go up to a plot ratio 12, or the 2 can be transferred to other development site in hand. It can be northern metropolis. It can be outside the northern metropolis. If they transfer the plot ratio, what we incline to think is they have the plot ratio and they transfer the number numerically, and we will not consider whether this is commercial premises or residential premises, or whether they are transferring this to other nature. This is a simple practice. When we talk with the sector, if they were to say that we should be more specific, we should not just talk about the sheer number, we should also take into account the nature of the transfer. Residential may be different from commercial in terms of value, and we're open to options there. Second, if the owner were to decide not to transfer the plot ratio, they would convert that into cash. Now let's go back to the To Kwa Wan example. How much would that additional plot ratio be worth? There would be a validity period applied to it. We cannot keep that ad infinitum without it being used. If this is kept for too long a time, the valuation may not be applicable. It may not be relevant to the market. So we would be specifying a validity period beyond which there would not be any extra PR on record. Now, how long should it be? We are only too happy to discuss with the trade, but definitely there will be a validity period. Any further questions? Yes, the one in black, please. Singtao Daily, 2 questions, also about urban renewal. Now we can see there is the cross-district transfer of plot ratio, and this is arising from the Yao Mong project. Now you are extending this to other districts for cross-district transfer. Would it be too big a step? Now you're encouraging redevelopment, and you have the extra plot ratio. How can you balance the need for urban redevelopment? There are 3 sites allocated to Urban Renewal Authority. Are you going to be supporting the URA or, in this way? With this impinge on the government's finances? That the URA would be rebuilding sustainably. How can you reconcile this with the 7-year period?
So all 3 questions about redevelopment. First, the question about transferring plot ratios across districts. The journalist asked the question about how we strike a balance between that and town planning. We now have transferring plot ratios within the same district. Now and in the future, you cannot just transfer the ratios on a whim. Any such transfer has to go through the town planning board. The TPB will act as a gatekeeper. We want to go from transferring plot ratios from within the district to across district for a reason. You can think about Yau Ma Tei and Mong Kok. If you allow transferring plot ratios across this within the district and you want to stay within the planning requirements, you can only go that far in transferring the plot ratios within the district. If we allow transferring across district, we can provide a greater incentive for redevelopment. When a transfer does happen, the TPB is there to act as gatekeeper, and when premium is needed, we will calculate the rate of premium fairly. So we believe this is in the public interest. Now, on granting sites to the URA, we gave the URA 2 sites for no consideration, and now we are giving the URA another 3 sites, and the journalist wondered if that would affect the government's financial position. Let's bear in mind that the URA is a statutory body. It's a partner of the government. The URA works within a rigorous framework. when the URA undertakes a redevelopment project, it is not just for profit. The URA also provides community facilities. And the URA is still compensating affected owners based on the 7-year rule. So the URA is under immense financial strain. Given that the URA is such a good partner of the government, we cannot just ask the URA to do the heavy lifting of redevelopment without giving them the resources. The government is also under financial strain, but we can provide land as a form of resources. That's why we insist on keeping up our effort to create land. So we want to find a way to support the URA without adding to our own expenditure. That's why we're granting the site. Now, on whether we have a timetable for reviewing compensation for acquisition based on the 7-year rule, we're inviting the URA to conduct a full review of the acquisition strategy for urban redevelopment. We hope we can conclude the review and come up with recommendations for public consultation within next year. Last question, the one in blue. I'm from Hong Kong Commercial Daily. A few questions for Ms. Winnie Ho. So we heard about the change in the split of GSH flats to white form flats. Will that hurt the chances of white form applicants for flats? The government has also been evicting well-off tenants. And those well-off tenants will get to keep their green form status for 4 years. Will priority go to these well-off tenants with green form status so that they can move out of their PRH flat sooner? Now, I also have a question about the flat for flat scheme. So people can go for a flat in a remote region and they give up their original flat. How do we distinguish between the core areas and the remote areas? Can you tell us how you draw the line? I thank this journalist for his questions. First, the split of green form and white form flats. So our suggestion is to go from 6 green, 4 white to half-half. So 5 for each kind of applicant. In the next 5 years, there will be more flats. HUS flats plus housing society flats, we will be up to 58,000 flats. In the first 5-year period of the current term government, we were at 39,000 flats, and we will go up to 58,000 flats. That's a sizable increase. So whether you're a white form applicant or a green form applicant, you are now getting a much better chance in getting a flat. Your chance has improved by as much as 25%. So for prospective home buyers, please keep a lookout for our subsidized sale flats. Public housing or subsidized sale flats is in the same situation as lands. We will keep producing units. Now we have a few strategies. So we will move closer to the market rent for well-off tenants. Well-off tenants now have to pay 2.5 times of the rent or 3.5 times of the rent instead of just twice or 3 times the rent. So now well-off tenants are paying a rent closer to the market rent. So with the higher rent, those well-off tenants can do the math. They can leave with a green form status for 4 years. There will also be more green form flats. So we take all these measures to encourage tenants to become owners I'm sure we're all aware of the benefits of owning the property. You own the flat, you pay the premium, you can even resell the flat in the secondary market. There is even another secondary market for selling the flat with the premium unpaid. You can pass on the flat. Now for the flat-for-flat scheme. What do we mean by core areas and remote areas? We have a distinction. For public rental housing, you have the urban areas, you have the extended urban areas, you have the new territories or outlying islands. Anyone moving to a different district or going for a small flat would benefit. That concludes the press briefing today. Thank you.